I do think very deliberately and intentionally about making the things accessible and practical. I'll give you an example. The way the Stoics render the four virtues, they typically say courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. So temperance to me was just a complete non-starter as a word, right? Like almost nobody knows what it means, and the people who do know what it means remember that it is associated with the temperance movement in the United States, which banned the drinking of alcohol in the early 1900s. And so my decision to talk about temperance through the lens of discipline was a very intentional decision to make the idea palatable and accessible to people who maybe don't wake up and think what I need is some temperance in my life, even though that's what discipline is all about, right? Sometimes discipline is doing more, but oftentimes discipline is doing less. So I thought a lot about this on this book also, right? When people think justice, they think a judge in robes, or they think these abstract moral questions about right and wrong. They're not thinking so much about sort of personal value ethics, which is really what they meant. All right.
Yeah.
The Stoics were involved in politics, but they don't have a lot to tell us about policy, right? So if you think when the Stoics when we get political with the Stoics, we're not saying, oh, yeah, we're talking about gun reform or tax law. Like the Stoics just have a lot to tell us about being engaged in the process, right?
Yeah.
Depending on one's own reading of the evidence and the issue. And I think where philosophers have trouble with this, and what I try to do in my work, like, you mentioned Kant. When you read Kant, you get this, there's almost this way that the philosophical discussions about justice become so abstract, but also so theoretical
Yeah.
that they almost make you doubt whether there is such a thing as right or wrong.
Yeah.
Like Kant famously said, you should never act in a way that shouldn't be made universal law, right? And so he has this famous problem about, like, the police are knocking at your door to try to get someone you are hiding who's being persecuted, right? Like the famous example would be like, you're hiding Jews in your basement and the Nazis are beating at your door. And Kant would say, well, you can't lie, right? Because lying is wrong. And so I think people read some of these philosophical issues, like the famous, do you know what the trolley problem is?
Say more.
So the trolley problem is this famous philosophical exercise, which is, um, there's a train on a track, and if it goes this way, it will kill one person, but if it goes this way, it will kill five people. You have to pull the lever. Which direction do you send it? Right, and it's this philosophical debate of whether one life is worth more than five lives. Should a person, anyways, you get into this discussion, and suddenly you're totally upside down and you don't know what's real or not. And what it really is to me, in a large sense, is a distraction from all the much more tangible ethical questions that we make in the course of a day,
Yeah.
right? Do you supply healthcare to your employees or not, right? Do you pay a living wage or not? Do you vote in an election or not, right? Do you buy things made in a sweatshop or not? Do you eat meat or not? There's all these actual questions that we can ask, that we have some domain of control over and immediate influence in. And instead, it feels like philosophers want to debate whether we live in a computer simulation or not, and so what I try to do in this book, and what I think the Stoics tried to do, was not get caught up in these endless debates about things, but to try to focus on where the rubber actually meets the road with these things. And that's much, much more interesting to me.